to be in the best spot in Johannesburg right now, Scoop's Theatre of Books. My name is Deborah. So on behalf of Scoop's Theatre of Books, I'd like to welcome you to the best bookshop and the only bookshop you need to be in Johannesburg. Give yourself a round of applause! I see some familiar faces here, which I'm very happy to see. Melanie and Leslie Ann and Australia and all the ladies that are here. Thank you for being here. It's so nice to see you. First timers here tonight, Kim from Tango with Text. Please like her page. She's just an absolute sublime blogger, reader, writer, and everything. One of my closest friends. Kimbo, thank you for being here tonight. Guys, this is being live streamed, so if you have any objections about being broadcasted to about 500,000 people, speak now or forever hold your peace. No, I'm serious. No? That's cool. First timers here tonight, can you raise your hands, please? Shame on you. Seriously. You obviously don't read. Shame on you again. Don't know what you're doing here then. This is a very special bookshop. In the last 18 months, we've launched over 200 South African and African authors in the store. Yep, this is where they hang out. We have these, please like our Facebook page, check into the Facebook page, please guys. This is an important night for Nicki tonight, and this is why you're here tonight. And you're not walking out this door without buying a book, so don't even look at me like that. My guards I've notified all the security guards, you're not allowed out of here without buying a book. I know a lot of you are her friends and her family, and I always say your friends and your family, sadly, are not your readership. They are your support group. And you play a big role in her life. Now, when I said 500,000 people, that's the reach that we do have worldwide for authors in the store that do launch. We work very hard for this. So please take a photograph of Nicki holding the book, and please post it on all social media. This is how we get to sell these books. Otherwise, how the hell do these authors get any recognition in this country? You know, we have the most sublime books in this store of African authors, right from the Ivory Coast down. 85% of them being women. Yeah, the warriors. So please support the South African authors, support your own, let's keep the money in the tribe. So I'd like to thank you for being here tonight. I met Nicki, immediately connected with her on a soul level. I'm an adopted child, so when she told me her story, it resonated with me. We have thousands of women having thousands of babies and chucking them all over the place, and then you have somebody like, by the way, Dallas, where are you? Your wife looks beautifully, blissfully sublime tonight. Not just nice, look at her. Because you know what, if I was a man, right? You wouldn't have a chance, buddy. Nicki, you look incredibly beautiful tonight. You really do, honey. And it's been an honor walking this journey with you. And welcome you, the newest author, with The Inconceivable Truth into Scoops. And I know with Australia and all the girls, we are going to be going forward, because this is a responsibility that you've taken upon of opening your heart. And I came across something today, which really smacked me in the face, and I want to read this to you, because this is my message to you tonight. I need to be startlingly clear. This thing of finding your authentic voice expressing your blessed weirdness, and revealing your soul isn't an elegant process. You don't do it to be cool. It's only real when it is ruthless, relentless, and inevitable. But it is also a matter of personal and collective survival. Yes, it's that important. You are that critical. I want you to take that to heart, because your story touched me so deeply. And you're a mother to all of us. I want you to know that too. Whether they're young or old, we are mothers. We are the nurturers. We are the people that nurture and love and hold and embrace. And you have just been an absolute butterfly in my life. And I want to thank you for being on Scoops tonight. Give a round of applause! So I'm going to hand over to Nicki. Just going to have some fun now. I believe we have somebody that's celebrating something tonight, but I'm going to hand over to Nicki, and she's going to be telling you about that. Guys, there's some more food. Nicki's really laid out a great spread. By the way, just so I'm clear with all of you, see this cake here? Nobody gets a piece of this cake unless you buy a book. Nobody. Because I'm going to be standing there flicking my fingers at you. You may have a cupcake, but you're not getting a slice of cake unless you buy a book. Right? We got that clear. Nicki Fenthum, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I'm quite overwhelmed at how many people have turned up, and I'm very grateful to all of you. Just before we start with the formalities, there's a gentleman here whose birthday it is. He's hiding at the back there. And I just want to share a funny story. His name is Ronnie, and he's Dallas's cycling partner. And many years ago, when Dallas and I were going through one of our rough times, they were cycling together, and Dallas said to him, you know, we go through a rough time and it's likely that we might get divorced. And Ronnie, being the quiet gentleman that he is, just carried on riding, and he didn't say very much. And then a little while later he says to Dallas, just make sure you get her mother's malva pudding recipe before you get divorced. So Ronnie, happy birthday. Here it is. Right. This beautiful lady here has been a friend of mine and is an ex-colleague. We met at Internet Solutions several years ago, and we've developed an amazing friendship. She really is somebody that I admire and look up to enormously, and we've shared lots of ups and downs together. Her name is Felicia, and she is going to be asking me some questions, and we're just going to be sharing some little bits and pieces out of the book. She's also going to do some questions and open up the floor, so you're welcome to ask me anything that you'd like to. And that should take us anywhere between 30-45 minutes, depending on how interesting or boring we are to you. And then there'll be more drinks and snacks afterwards. There are copies of the book. I'm happy to sign some of them for you, and I just hope you enjoy the evening. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Nicki. You've made my job a little easier, because now I don't have to repeat what you just said. But yeah, I mean, I'm deeply honored to be a part of this evening's proceedings, Nicki, and thank you so much for asking me. What a wonderful turnout, and this is testimony to the person that you are and how many people believe in you and your talent. So thank you, everyone. Nicki, you start off the book with a bit of a disclaimer, and it goes something like this. This is my story, with a dose of poetic license to protect the innocent, and probably the guilty too. I'm not an expert on fertility. I'm also not an expert on being a woman. Some of my story may not be 100% factual, but it is 100% my spiritual, emotional and physical journey of trying to understand how to define what it means to be a woman when fertility eludes you. I hope it helps other women going through the same experience. So, I mean, that talks to the fertility aspect, but when I read the book, it really is your life story. Was that a deliberate intention to include all of your life story, or was it something that just happened because you have to start at the very beginning with your relationship with Dallas and how things turned out and how you were treated as an IVF patient?
When I started writing the story, I realized that in order to understand how I ended up in the situation I had, I needed to go back, because things like my eating habits as a teenager, the way I treated my body, the effects of stress, having gone through burnout, all of those things had a bearing on the situation that I found myself in. So the emotions are so wrapped up in the physical state that it would have been impossible to separate the two. And as I started writing, the story just started flowing. So I had to write the full story in order to make sense.
I understand. You're also an avid reader, and you do quote Maya Angelou, and I mean, I think we all agree that she's one of the best authors, certainly in my book. I've read quite a few of her books as well, and she goes into great detail about her life story. And one of the quotes is, "I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it." Maya Angelou. Is she an author that resonates with you, and what about Maya Angelou's story resonates with you?
Everything I've read of hers is so powerful, it would be difficult to separate out one or two things that stick in my mind, but that particular quote resonates with me hugely. I think the fact that she came from such a rough upbringing and had such a tough life, a very colourful life, that to me makes her fascinating. And the wisdom that came from all of those experiences, it just made me realise that the richness of her life added to the colour of her story, and she's just been somebody that's been an inspiration to me my whole life.
So you start the book on a very sad note, with the news from the doctor's rooms, but you end triumphant, and it was almost like a rebirth, like your eyes have been opened again for the first time. Talk us through that little bit of this journey. And tell it as best you can.
To say it's a triumph, I don't know, it's quite a strong word. I still have days where the emotions catch me unawares, so I don't think it's something that you ever completely get over. But I'm blessed enough to have two beautiful boys in my life, one of whom is sitting here now. And I've got two nephews, I've got two beautiful nieces, one of whom is here. So my life is surrounded by children and adolescents and wonderful people that I can give my love and my time to. And I guess the experiences that I've gained through going through this journey, while I wouldn't say it's a triumph, it's survival, and it's my version of success, I guess, and trying to make the best out of a very difficult situation.
A difficult one it was indeed. But what about the IVF treatment and just being an IVF patient was the most heartbreaking, and would you relive that?
For some of the ladies that are here this evening, and I know Susan's one of the ladies that's been through this journey as well, I don't think it's possible to describe to somebody what it's like. The most difficult part is the ups and downs, because it's the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And you go into a cycle with so much hope because you can't go into it any other way. And you have to believe that it's going to work. And you've done everything you possibly can. You've eaten right, you've taken all the hormones, you've done everything right. And then this crashing low that comes after that, that seesaw of emotion became unbearable. And looking back on it, you asked me on Sunday if I would do it again. With hindsight, I think if I'd realized what I was in for fully, there's a possibility I might not have. But they say ignorance is bliss, and you know, part of it is going into the process with hope. And unfortunately, in our case, it didn't turn out the way that we'd wanted it to. But having said all that, going through that journey has brought me to this point, has given me the experience, has given me the wisdom, has enabled me to tell my story and to start a business that is going to be focused on educating young women about their bodies, the things that we don't get told, and supporting other women who are going through the same very arduous journey.
What a noble cause. What about this journey has been your most defining moment? If I could just go ahead of you. I mean, in chapter 40, when I read that first few lines, and you talk about how being a mother does not necessarily mean giving birth, and you had worked at, I think it was a children's cause, or an NGO, that dealt with underprivileged kids, and the joy that you got from being involved with these kids and watching them grow through it. And then, of course, looking at your own family and the two beautiful boys, Dylan and Ross. And one of the lines you say that Ross looked at you and he said, "Nicki, you're always smiling. And if you had petals around your head, you'd be a sunflower." And that just touched me.
It was moments like that where I realized that I had to live the life I had, and that living in the past and regretting things that had happened and hoping for things in the future that might never happen meant that I was missing out on all the wonderful opportunities and the beauty I had right in front of me. So there came a time where it was a conscious choice to let go of that journey and to know that Dallas and I had done everything we could within our financial, emotional, and my physical limitations. And at some point, I just wanted to live the beautiful life that I have with my family, my friends, and give the love that I have to the people that are around me. So that was the defining moment, was realizing all you've got is right here, right now, and you've just got to live it.
Yay to that. Thank you. What was one of your favorite chapters, and do you recall writing it?
Without a doubt, my favorite one was about our honeymoon and the series of disasters leading up to it and during it. And the young lady whose letter I quote, her mom and dad are here now, Tony and Rod Rutter. It was a letter that I wrote to Carmen, telling her about these series of disasters. And she wrote back and said to me, I wish I could sympathize with you, but it's so hysterical that every time I'm having a bad day and I'm feeling depressed, I just read this and I laugh hysterically and I realize that actually everything's going to be fine. So yeah, that was my favorite one to write.
Well, it was mine too. Chapter 14. Please can you read it to us? I think the audience needs to hear it to understand the humor.
Where do I start?
The bit where you've gone snorkeling,
Okay.
and then the one about your nuptials.
On our second day, Dallas suggested we go snorkeling. Embarrassing as it is to admit, I'd never tried snorkeling before, having a lifelong fear of water. Perhaps being asthmatic has something to do with it. The thought of any artificial apparatus interfering with my breathing makes me extremely nervous, so scuba diving was out of the question and snorkeling not much more appealing. Dallas is a qualified dive master and skilled surfer and swimmer. Having grown up at the coast, he is comfortable in water as he is on land. In Dubrovnik, there are no sandy beaches that we are used to along the South African coastline. There are either roughly pebbled beaches or stairs that go into the water directly off the rocks. So it all looked calm enough, and I decided to give it a bash. I'd barely taken my first couple of steps across the rocks and was only ankle deep in water when I stood on a sea urchin. I cannot remember what I said, but I'm sure it involved damning family members to hell, mixed in with various religiously offensive phrases. It really hurt. Dallas ran over and took me onto the rocks, where he whipped out his travelling pocket knife. To call it a knife is being kind, as that would lead you to think it had a sharp blade, with a point on the end. This resembled more of a butter spreader. I began protesting when I saw the tool that was supposed to save me, but Dallas was insistent that we needed to get the spines out of my foot immediately before the poison spread. He began prodding and digging, and even trying to cut along the side of the spines to extract them. Like all activities, one has a better chance of success with the correct tools, which we did not have. So, not that I was going to say, I frickin' told you so, but the spines broke into tiny pieces and got pushed even further into my foot, beginning and end of snorkeling lesson 101. And then I'll jump forward. I had spent a fortune on the most expensive pair of shoes I have ever bought. The fact that we were married in Dubrovnik, which is cobbled, much like Monty, they were, nons, you would have loved them, gold, with a thin strap on the front and an ankle strap. Needless to say, I got married in slops because the infection had my toe about that size and right up my leg, and I carried my shoes because they were coming to this wedding, and they were photographed next to the champagne bottle, and they were at that wedding.
Okay, so you're not going to go into the greed bit.
Oh, okay. The wedding official had a strong Croatian accent, and first Dallas and then I had to repeat back our vows as she read them to us while we stood facing one another and holding hands. At one point, the dear lady said to Dallas, "From this day forward, I promise to be your companion and your guide." I glanced at her and then at me, and then with a look of confusion, but I too had no idea what she meant and shrugged my shoulders at him. "I would really love to promise to be your companion and your guide, my darling," he said to me. "But unfortunately, I have absolutely no idea what that means."
Thank you, Nicki. So, I mean, there was just so much that resonated in this book with me, and I think you know a little bit more about me than most people in the audience, and this is really not about me. But there was a part in chapter 4 where you got, well, it was the best advice I had ever received. What was the best advice you had ever received going through this process?
If I remember correctly, the part that you're thinking of, I'd been to see a psychologist lady that had featured in my life on and off over the years, and she was very wise, and she basically said to me, I mean, at the time I was about 15 kilos lighter than I am now, my hair was falling out, I was really not in a good space, and she said something that was like having a hard punch in the stomach, but it's probably what I needed. And she told me that I had to choose myself, that I had to choose to live. And she basically told me that I was committing suicide slowly, and her words were, it's not as quick as blowing out your brains or stabbing yourself, but if you're not eating and nourishing your body, and you're not sleeping, and you're not taking care of your emotional well-being, slowly, day by day, you are diminishing yourself and you will die. And it was very hectic to receive that message, but it shocked me enough to realize that I needed to make some serious changes.
Yep, when I read that, I thought, well, it's time you make some changes in your life, because I think she mentioned something about the grey bits, that much of life exists in the grey bits. And in as much as you see things as black and white, unless you compromise, in other words, you'll live a very miserable life. And that is certainly what I took from that chapter. So thanks for writing that too. I'm going to open it up to the floor now. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to ask a question or two, please feel free to come up to the stage. Unfortunately, the mic is not wireless, so you're going to have to be up front and center. Any questions? Please come up. It doesn't extend very far, the mic, unfortunately. Come on. You can do it. Please say who you are, and then ask your question.
Hi, I'm Mel. I feel like I'm at a meeting. And I'm a reader. My question to you, having had a very similar journey and had slightly different outcomes, but I mean the journey is horrifically painful for everyone involved, is, are you going to take this book to fertility labs and ask them to train people with a story that is real and not science? Because every fertility place I went to, they gave me science and they gave me the good stories. And I must say, I got to a point where I realized I would never have children as long as I had hope, because on the back of hope was the most horrific crush. And so the realistic story for me needs to happen in their rooms. People need to get it with the actual treatment. It almost needs to be, you want to buy a car, you have to get a license. You want to make a baby, you've got to know how hard and how tough it's going to be, because the expense is actually not going to be the sore part. So, yeah, I would like to hear your answer.
Thank you, Mel. For those of you that have read the book, you'll know that I'm not exactly complimentary about the fertility clinics. I honestly do feel like it's a money-making racket largely, and that you get told as much as you need to get pushed into the next procedure. I read an interesting article a while ago about 4 or 5 American doctors, female doctors, who, when they decided they wanted to have children, couldn't. And they were in the area of fertility treatment, and how going through the process as a patient completely changed their outlook on how they interacted with their patients. So I guess the tide seems to be turning in terms of a little bit of awareness, but to my knowledge, most of the doctors in South Africa are men. I personally haven't had experience with the female ones, but I'm sure they're out there. So I guess I need to get my story right in my head of how to approach it, because it's not going to be an easy conversation. But at the end of the day, my job is to support the patients, not the doctors, and whatever support and information they need, that is my role, to make them feel supported and informed. So yes, at the right time, I absolutely will do that.
Any more questions?
Are you going to write another book?
To my friend Carmen in Cape Town, who's probably watching this right now, and several other people who've asked me, I probably will. I haven't started it yet, but I probably will. As most of you know, the end of last year and the beginning of this year didn't exactly turn out the way that I planned. And Mel, to your point about speaking to the doctors, I'm convinced that one of the reasons I ended up with breast cancer is because of the hormones that got pumped into me during the IVF process. And there's lots of literature that will tell you the correlations to that, but nobody's actually got the guts to stand up and say, this is what happens. But the surgeon that I had for my breast cancer, she said she reckons it's up to 3 times more likely that it will happen. So that's part of the research that I'm busy with at the moment. And part of me wants to say, enough. How much more of these things do I have to handle? So hopefully this is the last one. But there again, out of this has come the amazing ability for me to support other people who are going through the same thing. There again, to educate people, go and get checked, understand how your body works. Don't think that it can't happen to you, because let me tell you, there is nothing that prepares you for somebody looking at you and saying you have got cancer. So if you can avoid it, do so.
Say hello to Carmen because she's watching.
Hello, Carmen!
Hello, Carmen. Any other questions?
Yes. So not only can you not have a baby, you got cancer. What was, and it's obviously taken a big toll on your marriage. What was the greatest lesson for you and Dennis through this whole procedure? As a couple.
I think the blessing for me in this whole thing was realizing that he didn't see me as not being whole because I couldn't have children, and because he's got 2 boys, it was something that he went through for me that he wanted to do with me, but the outcome didn't define our marriage. That wasn't the reason we got married. And then when the breast cancer came along, he was so amazingly supportive. And there again, it's 2 lumps of tissue. Whether they're there or they're not there, that doesn't define who I am as a woman. So the gift that I got in our relationship was realizing that he sees the essence of me as a woman and as a person that isn't defined by my uterus and my breasts. But I fought harder to accept that in myself than he did. So the majority of the stress in this has been me trying to redefine myself as a woman than how he saw me. That was my experience.
Martin, please do come up. You don't have to say your name, I've already said it.
Hello everyone, my name is Martin and I read books, but I'm going to cut out the X going forward. I think my question, I've got 2 questions for you. The first question is, how did you balance out the gray areas? And you mentioned something so profound now, in that you spent many years focusing on the things that weren't important to your marriage, and after tragedy, then understanding that actually what is important to your marriage. In hindsight, what advice can you give to us younger people? In hindsight, what advice could you give to the younger people in the audience? And,
I really used to like you.
Yeah.
We'll deal with you later.
you said that to me before and forgiven me. And have you thought of a movie for this? And who do you think would play you?
Haven't thought of a movie, and someone else can answer that part. In terms of the learning about what's important and what isn't, and it's still a work in progress, as I'm sure Dallas will tell you. I used to be a hectic control freak, and things had to be done a certain way, at a certain time, my way or no way. And just a small example, when the boys were still younger, they'd come into the house and there'd be grass and mess, and I used to run around and clean everything up and get in a complete state about it. And then I realized that it's our home, and there's still things that need to be tidied up, and there are things that need to be done, but I want our home to be somewhere where people are happy to come, and it's comfortable and welcoming, and we have people over for meals, and just not sweating the small stuff. But it involves a personality or fundamental change, because that's the way I'm wired. But having gone through burnout and being booked off work for 3 months, and you refocus on what the price is that you pay for focusing on things that in the greater scheme of things, tomorrow, next week, next year, they're really not important. So that's, I can say, the most important lesson is just focusing on the relationships and being in the moment, instead of worrying about all the small stuff that can be cleaned up and tomorrow you won't even remember it.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? No? Okay. Thank you, Nicki. As I said, it's been an honor to be part of this evening's proceedings. I think this is the end of our formalities, but Deborah will remind you that books are for sale and that you are not to leave here without buying one.
And cake.
And of course there's cake and entertainment.
And food and drinks.
So yeah, please do enjoy yourselves, and if you're leaving immediately or whenever you get out on the road, be safe.
Wow.
Sorry, Deborah was just reminding me to tell everyone that you can have your book signed and pay for it downstairs on your way out.
I think we're all just like, wow.